Calling all consumer goods business owners and marketing professionals. Does planning content ahead of time stress you out? Do you want to run Instagram and Facebook ads but just aren't sure where to start? If your answer is yes and yes, then our mini course was made for you. It's 100% free and packed with essential tactics that you can implement as soon as today. To join in, visit our website at umaimarketing.com/mini-course. All right, let's get on with the pod.
I'm Allison, co-founder of UMAI, and we're being joined by Andy Kurtz, creative director and founder of Buttermilk Creative, a full-service design studio that's done the branding and packaging for the Fresh Market, Fire Cider, Publix Grocer, and Wegmans, and that's just to name a few. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you so much for having me, Allison.
Thanks for being here. I'm excited because to me, branding and packaging is just kind of a difficult mystery. So I'm hoping that you can demystify some things for me today.
I will try.
Good. Well, let's start with your background. So how did you get into design?
Sure. So I always knew when I was little that I wanted to be in some sort of creative field. And I was lucky enough, through sixth grade on, to have some sort of art class in every single semester, whatever. And as it got closer in high school, I got closer to sort of figuring out what I was going to study in college. I started being very intentional about the classes I could take. And we had a vocational high school here that you could travel to. And so I filled up my courses junior and senior year with computer arts and photography and commercial art and all that kind of stuff, digital illustration. So when it came time to, going out and, for college, I knew I wanted to do something creative. So initially I went to study fine art painting and realized very quickly that that's basically one in a million kind of thing. To be that's training to be a star athlete or a star actor. The thought that a gallery is going to pick you up is crazy. So I quickly retooled and recalibrated and ended up going to the Ringling School of Art and Design, guess now it's called College of Art and Design in Sarasota, Florida, to study illustration and design there. And that's really where it all sort of gelled with me, of this intersection of fine art and business. And so studied there for 4 years and then worked at a print shop right out of school, doing everything that they needed. And that was eye-opening because in school, they don't teach you about separation, print plates, all the kind of limited color printing, offset, all that kind of stuff. And so I got a bit of a trial by fire because the woman who ran the press was she didn't take anything from anybody. And so, so if I messed something up, she was right there.
Were you printing shirts or just anything?
Anything, business cards, brochures. They did digital printing and offset and letterpress printing. So it was everything. It was a full service print shop. And so that was really neat because I got to literally design something and then see it be made into a plate and then go on the press and then get printed 5,000 copies or whatever. And so then my wife and I moved up to North Carolina and I started working at the Fresh Market and running their in-house design team. And it was really there that I really found a love for packaging design and specialty food and beverage, which is what we now focus on. And, during my time there, we did a ton of stuff that I think when we started tracking our projects, we had 500 projects a year or something. Wow. And a lot of that was the packaging design. And that was really interesting to work on it there because there was no line look, which when you think about a private brand design look at a grocery store, it's normally, put the logo at the top, product photography, item name, hit send. For them, everything was a blank slate. And so what we did was we would look at the maker and the manufacturer for inspiration, the product, if there were any history there, and really just dug into that to inspire the look of the packaging. So while it was sort of maddening having to like restart every time, we wish we had some plug and play options for some of the stuff. It really helped me sort of refine how to design packaging for a wide variety of people. And so I was there for 7 years, and then 6 years ago started Buttermilk Creative, just basically doing what I had a lot of experience doing with the fresh market, but just with our own clients. And it's really neat. Like, the specialty food and beverage industry is actually pretty small. And so a lot of the folks that I worked with at the fresh market went on to work at other places or for other brands. And we just the network really grows itself.
Mm-hmm. So cool. You get to do your passion every day. That's awesome. But with the fresh market, when you're saying you're doing packaging design, is that like their self-produced products, or is it other brands got help from y'all, or how does that work?
So it's like any kind of private label program. Yeah. Cool. So they would go out, source manufacturers that are offering sort of white label service or whatever. And then so that was interesting too, because we would have to design within whatever parameters. So like, for instance, there was this crouton, this company that made croutons, and their box was very distinct, and we had that on the shelf at the fresh market. And then the fresh market started working with them on making croutons, fresh market brand croutons, but it came in the same shape of box. So we had to be very clear, like in our design, because already the form, tied them together. And so we had to be very clear on how we designed that crouton packaging so it didn't look anything like the people who made it. Mm-hmm. Because there's not a lot of, no, unless it's like some kind of exclusivity thing, like grocery stores don't really want you to know who's making their products.
Yeah. Interesting. I just love that you have that background in grocery. So I'm really curious, now that you're working with, other clients, how does that affect your overall design?
Oh, I reference it all the time, daily. It really has built this great foundation and education for designing for brands, because even if you're trying to get on to a mass market conventional grocery store or a super duper specialty grocery store, the rules of the shelf are pretty much the same. And even before you get on the shelf, you have to get on a grocery buyer's radar. And then even before that, there's a category review schedule. And so I got exposed to all this really inner workings of grocery stores that help my clients navigate all that. Now, by no means am I like a broker or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I have no idea. That is not our specialty. But if a client calls me up and is like, hey, I need quick samples or mock-ups because I'm going to a category review meeting, or I'm sending stuff in for a category review meeting with my with our broker in 2 weeks, I know exactly what they need, and I can just crank it out for them. Mm-hmm. No more, no less. And so just being able to see that, and then also being able to see when there were samplings and cuttings, that's where they get a ton of samples and they lay it all out in the test kitchen and just go around and rate and eat everything and sample everything. So there'd be a whole
sounds awesome.
Oh man. And so that, but if you were invited to, let's say, the ice cream cutting, you also had to go to the olive oil cutting, or what, something or the vinegar tasting or whatever, Yeah. So they were like, you guys can't just cherry pick. If you want to be involved in this process, then you have to take the good with the bad. But no, it was really neat, because we could really see from the VP level to the coordinator level to like a specialist level, what sort of resonated with them packaging wise, outside of all the other stuff, ingredient quality, margins, all that distribution, all that kind of stuff, all the sort of business stuff. But then we also could hear what aesthetically stuck out to them, but then also what disqualified a maker. So like if their nutrition facts panel wasn't formatted properly, or they didn't have a UPC code on their packaging, it could be the most amazing, best story, the greatest product ever. But if it wasn't compliant, it wasn't shelf ready, then it was too much work to go back to that maker and say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. Then
so they'd get cut just because of those.
Yeah.
So
yes.
what do you mean exactly by the nutritional facts not being formatted? Like it's like kind of oblong or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what people do to the FDA provides lots of different formats for your packaging. Most people just think of that traditional, just like, table version, but there's a version where it's just words,
Oh, okay.
And so that would go on a really small package. But a lot of folks just take, because that you get a JPEG image of your nutrition facts, and from whoever, the lab or whatever, and then you're like, okay, well, I need to take this format and then just slap it on this label or whatever. So they just shrink it, or they squeeze it, or they compress it, and while technically you have a nutrition facts panel, it's not, well, for one, it's not doing the consumer any good because they can't read it. And then there is a potential that it'll get flagged in by the FDA, and then you have to fix it, and there might be fines associated with that. So just that awareness of all the different formats and which one can go with which size of label. The size of label really drives everything.
Wow, that's something so small. I feel like a lot of people could easily overlook, but so those are the no-nos. What are there any, like you talked about grocery buyers resonating with certain types of packaging? Is there anything that stands out that people should look to add to their design?
I think it's always having, you don't clutter the packaging, but having good call outs that are relevant to your customer and the category that you're in. So if it's like this is a very generic example, but if you're making an energy bar, then make sure you mention keto and paleo or whatever, and so like really being able to, and then any relevant certifications or logos like USDA organic or non-GMO, that kind of stuff, that really resonates with grocery buyers, because they know that all of those certifications to use those logos cost money. Well, first of all, you have to get your product approved and your facility approved and all that kind of stuff. And then you have to keep it up, and that's, you pay for that every year. So obviously you're invested in whatever
Those standards. Yeah,
exactly. And so that, I think that means a lot. Beyond that, it's very, I mean, they're really looking for stuff that is going to stand out on the shelf. It's going to be different than what they currently have. And so if you have the ability, then you go to whatever store you're going to try to get into and really look at the set, and really understand, okay, that everything's dark or everything's brown here. Let's say like the granola set, everything's either really light or really brown. So maybe we do a bright bag, for ours, whatever. And so that's because they're really, and they're also, this is nothing I have control over, but they're also looking for like what the format is and like how many they can get on the shelf and all that kind of stuff. So if you have some kind of funky shape or something, and your competitor can get 4 bags on a shelf, and because you're a crazy shape you can only do 2, that's going to sort of hinder you. But and then aesthetically, it's all very subjective, I think.
Okay.
No matter from like and everybody has their own, like, their own taste.
Yeah, like Fresh Market's gonna be different than like Walmart, like.
And even within those organizations, we had super conservative people that like were grocery veterans that were like, oh no, you gotta have the Starburst, in the corner, and then there were the, other folks who were like really in touch with like cutting edge, trendy design. and they would push us to be more, out of the
Mhm.
box and be more subtle and whatever. So it just ran the gamut there too.
Mhm.
And yeah, you'll find the same, wherever it is. That's why we work with a lot of other grocery stores, is that we have worked in-house at a grocery store. So there's already a bit of a learning curve that we've already gotten over, because it's a quirky world, and
Mhm.
like it's to take a designer who maybe has been working in an agency environment and then say, okay, now you're going to freelance with this in-house department at a grocery store. It's a totally different animal. And so that's sort of a value add that we bring, is that we can just get plugged into the team like right away.
Very cool. Huge value. And I
Yeah.
love that tip. Just go to the store.
Oh
And
yeah.
I mean, when you're starting your branding journey, like go to the store and just be different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so obvious, but so we talked about grocery buyers, kind of what they're looking for. I mean, like you said, it's going to vary, but anything specific that consumers are looking for, is that also, how can brands know what their consumers are going to look for on the shelf, I guess?
Yeah. Well, that just goes back to knowing who your target customer is and speaking to them, and like really having a laser focus on who that is and being as specific as you can. Way too many, I think, brands out there sort of skip over that process. And like we talked to one of our clients early on, and we were like, okay, well, who's your target customer? And they said, anyone with a mouth. And it was
Oh
like, that
gosh.
is not,
I've heard that so many times. I'm like, that's not right.
that doesn't work. Yeah. So but so yeah, it's understanding exactly who that is, and then that's, you know creating your messaging and your packaging all around that, detaching yourself from it,
Mhm.
and really focusing on who that, because you could be, a 30 something year old dude like me who wants to make something that's targeted for, older women or something. I'm going to need to really research, which we're actually doing right now. We're making a packaging for powdered supplements that is gonna target like Gen X women. And so I had to sort of take a step back and say, well, you know, what's going to resonate with that?
How do you figure that out? Are you just like on TikTok? Like,
Well, not TikTok. Did I say Gen X? What was the 90s? Who was the 90s and early 2000s? Was that Gen Z?
millennials?
Before millennials? So whatever that generation was before millennials.
Gosh, I don't know.
So it would be, people like women who grew up in like the 80s, late 70s, early 80s into the 90s, come of age in the 90s, you
Mhm.
know? And so it turns out that demographic is not spoken to really. And so our client, we worked with a person who does marketing research, and like when you think about powdered supplements, you're going to automatically think, oh, it's a younger crowd, it's possibly skews female, health focused, exercise, and you do all that, and you've basically just described every core customer for every
Right.
powdered supplement brand out there. And so so she sort of uncovered this like untapped demographic for this type of product. That I think those folks are, that demographic's just as interested in eating good food and being healthy and active and all that kind of stuff as the younger crowd. And so we didn't make like the packaging look like a Nirvana album cover,
Which
you
would
know,
be sick. I
which would be pretty
mean,
neat. But we knew that again, that wasn't really that. While they might have listened to that music, it's visually probably wouldn't have. It would have been weird.
Mhm.
And so we just worked on how do we, just really try to put on our target customer hat, and because it doesn't look like a design that I would necessarily be attracted to. But
And I think that must be really difficult to, I mean, like you said, you're a 30-something-year-old man constantly having to design for other people, which is makes a great designer. But like, tell us more how you get into that. Like you said, the customer avatars. Are you listening to Nirvana every night and like drawing what you do, or what?
I just try to immerse myself in the research and just really try to check all the assumptions at the door. And I also have great help from my wife, who isn't in the creative work on a day-to-day basis. She's a studio director, so she is invoicing and sending emails out and sort of doing that kind of stuff and managing other things. And so she really can sort of look over my shoulder and say, like, what are you doing? Who is it? Who are you designing for? And really helps sort of ground me, because I will fall back into, some like just things that I like visually that do not fit. And so that's a super help as well. So having someone with fresh eyes look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just leaning into it. And by now, I think I don't really, the thing that my goal is not to make something cool. It's to make something that the client is going to be happy with and is hopefully going to make them a lot of money. And so whether I think it's cool or not, or aesthetically pleasing or whatever, is so, I mean, it's part of it. And I'd like to think that what I'm making is going to look good on the shelf, but would I put pink at the top of a box or whatever? Like, maybe not. But if that's what the client wants and feels that is going to resonate with their core customer and it's going to fly off the shelf, then I'm putting pink up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So, I mean, we just talked about the customer avatar, how you get in that zone, but how do you tell the story of a brand in such a small space? Like, how is that done?
Oh man.
Sounds like a challenge.
It totally is. Yeah. And it's even more challenging. So like I worked on these gourmet butters, and the cup is about 1.5 inches tall. The design space was about 1.5 inches tall. So then the cup is slightly taller, So I had to sum up this whole, story of this amazing butter that is developed by the maker is from France, and he's got this whole culinary background, and his grandma made this type of, flavored table butter or whatever, all into this little tiny thing. So, I mean, it really, you're just looking for anything that is that you can pull from the history or from the story and integrate. If it's a color, if it's a little symbol, if it's I don't know, and then you have to also accept that you're not gonna be able to get everything across on that packaging too. And, and there's other opportunities with the website and other places to further tell the story. So yeah, it's a balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Finding that customer, that target customer, if you're a part of that process in any way, how can branding people help with that process?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, we are part of that process. There are plenty of specialty studio or firms, that help with that specifically, but we can help embody that avatar, like once you nail down who that persona is, then that is really when we can start humming along with, like, because that's going to inform objectively the work. The founder might, this goes back to what I was earlier saying, you as the founder might hate the color orange, but when I present something orange to you and you bring up, oh, I hate the color orange, it's like, well, but your target customer, like, prove to me that your target customer hates the color orange.
Mm-hmm.
And it just gives you, as the designer, a leg to stand on, because that's like the worst thing, poison pill for a design project, is those subjective feelings that come into play. And when people give criticism or try to give criticism who aren't used to giving criticism, like go art school, like we were so used to being, torn apart at a critique that really doesn't, none of that bothers me.
Yeah.
And also giving constructive criticism, but a lot of the founders that we work with, they're not used to that, and it's uncomfortable to talk about design. And so you can either accept that you don't really know what you're talking about, because I can't tell you how to run a snack company.
Yeah.
I don't know the first thing about it, how to set up a line to fill bags of chips. I'm not going to tell you, anything about that. So I think a lot of people assume that, oh, design is easy. I can give feedback, and it's not. And the sooner you can accept that and just say, I'm out of my element, but I can help you sort of walk through what you're sort of feeling and then translate it into actual feedback that will help the design.
Yeah, design is difficult to talk about because I mean, I don't know how you communicate like design. I mean, like there's Pinterest, and I think that's like a kind of a bridge to help people communicate like their feelings.
Exactly.
But it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywhere along the way, a good way to do it is through a mood board, which is basically, just creating a Pinterest board and aligning on, what a client means when they say clean and modern, and it's like my interpretation of clean and modern is going to be different than your interpretation of clean and modern. So let's align on that. And then if that's what you want your packaging to be, and it aligns with your target customer, then we have a baseline. But sometimes, a mood board is too conceptual for a client, and they're like, what am I looking at? So you're going to actually, use that font. It doesn't say our name, or whatever, because you can also put font choices on mood boards, along with color and along with just overall look and feel. I mean, we sort of do a case by case basis, because we've presented mood boards where people just got way too literal with them and just couldn't get away from them. And they thought that literally that's what their packaging was going to look like. And it was like, no, we're just trying to capture a mood here.
Yeah.
Mood board. But yeah, and then trying to, help your client. Like, I know that it's hard to give feedback. And so I'm not going to overwhelm them with a bunch of design terms, because I know if a client doesn't like a font, they can't reference and say like what it is. Like, they're not going to say, well, I just want the serif to be more humanist, or whatever. It's like, yeah, I know what that means, but
I do not.
Yeah. And so like they wouldn't know, you can't. So like when they say like, I don't know, I just, the font, that font feels too cold. And if it's like a sans serif, then I probably need to explore some serif, more warm, friendly fonts that feel more human looking, versus something that looks more computer looking.
It's so interesting. It really is. I mean, I love that you have to like dissect what someone's trying to say on a constant basis to get it right.
Oh yeah.
It's very cool. But you did talk about the evolution of brands. So I just wanted to ask, should a brand design their packaging knowing that in the future that they'll most likely want to do a refresh, or should they design something that's withstanding time?
Sure. So especially for like a startup brand, you can almost guarantee that whatever packaging you launch with, no matter if you invest $500 or $1 million, you're gonna redo it very quickly. And so a lot of the startup brands, we sort of try to steer away from, like, they should look at more economical options, and then come to us afterwards when they're out there for a year or so.
Because I can see that getting someone really stuck on launching is like the branding has to be right, and it's just like, just get it out. Okay, cool.
And so an article that I wrote for the Startup CPG Spotlight blog. It was published last Friday, and it's going to be a series where I talk to founders about what kind of packaging they started with and launched with, and what the packaging looks like now.
Oh, that's kind of like the social media trend.
Yeah,
that's happening right now. I love it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it's called. It's called what is it? This is how it started. This is how it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, and so thank you. And like that is, and so the one that just published is with the folks who started Bare Bones Broth, and it's Kate and Ryan Harvey. And I talked to Kate about it. And yeah, like when you look at how they started, looks nothing like what it looks like now.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that was due to, just the challenges of a small brand. Like they had to do a label on a stock bag, versus now they can get bags printed and it's beautiful full color bags. But then it also was, you can tell the design aesthetic wasn't as obviously polished, but they just needed to get out there and just learn along the way, versus getting hung up, because you can almost guarantee it's going to get redesigned. And then for like more established brands, then obviously I'm trying to create something that's going to be somewhat timeless, so it doesn't look like it's you can tell something was designed in 2020 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you can pretty much guarantee, just based on a lot of different factors, that you're going to get a redesign, or you should start exploring a redesign around 5 years. That's really, but then the shelf life of most designs, if the company is, sticks around, is around 10 years.
Okay.
But yeah, like if you really want to keep things fresh and keep, on top of, revisiting call outs or revisiting sort of small tweaks that might improve your packaging and visibility, then, 5 years is a good rule of thumb.
Great. I love having those hard numbers. I know it's not a hard number, but I think that's really helpful to kind of wrap your head around. So I would love to get your input on sustainability, where sustainable packaging, what things you're excited about in that realm, or where we're moving towards for that.
Yeah, I'm really excited, but then also sort of like frustrated, because the options are super limited. And it's really going to take someone like a Coca-Cola or one of these large CPG companies to really lean into sustainable packaging. Then that will help everyone else be able to,
because it's got to go down the chain, right?
Yeah. And it's just so expensive right now, but it's critical. Now, I did hear something interesting the other day, that we focus a lot on compostability and like, making something that you can throw away. And they were basically like, no. Whether you're recycling or whether you're, throwing it into a landfill or doing some kind of compostable thing, you're still generating trash and waste. And really, what we should really be focusing on is reusability. And so that's one thing that I've been really inspired by, is seeing how folks are, doing the reusable thing. There's this soap company that sends out the little like dissolvable pods. Like your kit that you buy has like the pump in it, or the whole thing, and then you do a subscription, and then in a month or whatever, they just send you a little pod. You pop in there and shake it up with water.
Yeah.
And that's really neat to think about, how you can apply that reusable, refillable to other industries. And every client we work with, we try to help them navigate sustainable packaging, or explore sustainable packaging, or just lesser impact packaging, just because it's hard. And sometimes just there's not, the investment just isn't there, and like the budget isn't there. And our business isn't on the line, and so we can't push them too much, but we do try to, every conversation when it comes to a format and substrate, we try to bring that up.
You give the options. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's got to start from the top because it's probably way too expensive. I know a lot of brands start with like glass and things like that, but as they grow, they just can't keep up with that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Any other packaging innovations that excite you?
Let's see. There was this really interesting company that I talked to that they do this neat thing. I think it's called Phantom Graphics, maybe. And basically, what they do is it's only with clear pressure sensitive labels right now, but they're exploring other materials. But basically, they through printing on top of the label and behind the label a certain pattern, it looks like the image that you've printed is moving. It's hard to describe, but it's really
Like
cool.
a 3D thing?
Yeah, like did you ever, when you were a kid, did you ever have like books that had like overlapping black and white images, and when
Yeah.
you sort of moved them over, they look like they're moving?
Yeah, I think I
Not,
know what you're talking about.
it's not a hologram, it's not like a lenticular printing, which is sort of like when you have something that you sort of move back and forth and it's like textured. This is something totally different, and I don't know, it was just fascinating to me that they have been able to, like, pressure sensitive clear printing on clear pressure sensitive labels is, it's not the oldest type of packaging printing, but it's not particularly new, but they've been able to make something that's old new and interesting. You can think about the implications for like you know like you could put a clear label on a beer can, and that would be really neat. Because it's already sort of a funky category, and always looking for ways to innovate. We are actually potentially going to work with them on one of our clients who she makes, called True North Beauty. She makes skincare with chaga mushrooms, and she's got this beautiful like malachite pattern as part of her packaging. And to just think about how, if that malachite looked like it was moving, like almost like water, moving around.
Cool.
I don't know, just, and so that would be appropriate for her category, because like you just expect to have really beautiful, rich packaging experiences with health and beauty.
Wow, if that project goes through, definitely ping us.
Oh,
I
yeah.
need to see that.
For sure.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. My final question is something that we like to ask everyone. It's a difficult one though. So, what are some of your favorite brands or packaging designs right now that we can all look at and get inspired by? It's hard to choose favorites, we know.
I know. Let's see. God, who are some of the, God. Okay, here, I'm going to name some studios that I am constantly amazed with what they're putting out.
Okay.
Just because I follow them, and then you can look at their work. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
So there's this one that's basically who I consider just about the leader in this sort of natural products packaging design world, is Interact in Boulder. Think of any sort of like that when you've gone to like Expo West or one of the trade shows, and like there's a really cool brand in packaging, and they've probably had a hand in it. So I'm always looking to them on like a daily basis, like who are they working with, or who did they launch, or I try to guess if I see like a cool new natural product out there. I'm like, I bet Interact had something to do with them. Another really neat one is Miller. I think it's Miller Creative in New Jersey. They do a lot of super great work, and look on their Instagrams. That's where the best place I think to see things. But yeah, it's sort of funny. Like I do packaging on a daily basis, but it sort of has become sort of noise to me as well. So like I look for inspiration outside of packaging.
Oh, yeah. That's
you know,
cool.
because if you just look at packaging, then you're just going to sort of
It all kind of merges together, maybe.
What everybody else is making. So yeah, that's a.
So how do you get inspired? Let me ask you that.
Oh man, with my art and just trying to expose myself to as much in things outside of the design world as I can. I mean, like you have to on one hand be in tune with it so that you're creating things that are within the same, visual trend or vocabulary, so that customers, what you're designing is going to resonate with customers. But on the other hand, you have to infuse different new inspiration so that you don't look like everyone else. So yeah, like I've just, because of my background, I love art and I love painting. And so I'll pull out, I've got a whole bunch of art books, and that's where I'll look for. So like there was a few years ago, there was a California olive oil that I was designing, and one of my favorite movements is painting was the Bay Area figurative movement. And there's this one particular painter named Richard Diebenkorn, and he did these really neat like geometric paintings, and they were basically look like landscapes, but they were geometric. And it's just, they're amazing, and they got a lot of texture and everything. I basically designed because it's California olive oil, this was a California art movement. I sort of tied those two together and made the label look like that. One of the ideas. The other idea was a like sort of a cliff with like the ocean, would look very like quintessential, like Highway 1, like you pull off the side of the road. That's the option they went with. But I still had that other option, which had a ton of like, like all this like sort of art history associated with it.
Yeah.
I'll do that a lot.
Or you like, choose this one.
Yeah. I was like, it's a slam dunk, and they were just like, I don't know. I just really like the seaside one. It just really sums it up. And I was like, okay.
Oh man, that must be hard.
Oh man.
You need to like frame all your favorites too and just be like, this should have won.
Yeah. Oh man, I long ago have stopped picking favorites with my designs.
Oh yeah.
And just, I mean, you just can't put anything out there that you wouldn't be proud being associated with,
Yeah.
Like that was sort of the rule of thumb when I first started one of the techniques we used was always include a really bad one so that the other two look really good. And
do you actually do that?
Oh yeah, we would.
That's like behavior, like 101 is like, don't really give them choices.
Yeah.
Give them a bad choice and a good choice.
Yeah. So now we just limit the options and we only present just a couple options that we feel really strongly about, and they could pick either one and we would be happy. So yeah, that's but yeah, like my favorite designs, like that my hard drive is filled with so many of those that just never see the light of day.
Yeah. Kind of sad. You should have like a second website of like Andy's graveyard or something.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I'll try that. Yeah.
Well, Andy, this was really fun and I learned a lot. Thank you for talking to us about branding and packaging.
You bet.
Everyone needs to go check out Buttermilk Creative. Can you tell people where they can find you or reach you?
You bet. Yeah. Buttermilkcreative.com is where you can see us. And then on Instagram, we're Buttermilk Creative. And then we are on Clubhouse. And I love Clubhouse.
Oh, yeah?
I host a show every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern with my friend Kirk, who's also another Kirk Fazzola, who is another packaging designer on the West Coast. And we just have a blast. We talk for an hour just about anything packaging related.
UMAI Social Circle is a CPG agency-driven podcast based out of Austin, Texas. We're excited to share more behind-the-scene insights, chats with industry leaders, and whatever else we learn along the way. Follow us on Instagram at UMAI Marketing, or check out our website, umaimarketing.com. Catch you back here soon.